Welcome in here to HGC North America, where, well, things are quickly approaching here through EU as you had a break, but now we get some action here as we've got an action-packed weekend ahead of us. My name is Jay Hound. Joining me is Dreadnought. Dreadnought, some potential shakeups this weekend.
Surely some potential shakeups, especially when we look at teams like Octalysis this weekend have a huge weekend ahead of them, not only with the doubleheader that they have, but as we have talked about throughout all of part number 2, as how they have this kind of interesting ladder system. It feels like that they are very much working through here in North America. And today, I feel like is really the first time that we get to see them challenge after a dominant performance last week.
We got a lot to get into this weekend, but first we're going to address the elephant in the room, because that is Arthlon making his abrupt retirement announcement earlier this weekend for HeroesHearth. They are our first team today, and a lot of that, obviously, I think a lot of people could potentially look at that as a blow. It's obviously a difficult situation, I think, for a lot of people to address, but Dreadnought, your thoughts on this?
I mean, for me, I look at it as, you know, when looking at the past of HeroesHearth Esports, as early as them in the Crucible and their kind of climb throughout, a lot of their performance, it seemed like, did kind of hinge on what level of performance level we would get from Arthlon on that day. And that consistency factor, I can't help but feel like with that new adjustment and being able to pick up a new player, finding that level of consistency and adjusting their play style to not be so dependent on that kind of off-lane soaking can really get them in an opportunity to hopefully be able to grow even beyond what they were within the original roster.
Well, you mentioned the Crucible. I think that's important to note, because just this week we had 2 members qualify for the Crucible in Scythe Esports and Storm Gaming. And one of those members of Scythe Esports, the #1 team coming out of that, Talking Trees, will be the sub for this weekend. And it's a sub that they are familiar with. We had Talking Trees sub during week 1 of Phase 2, and you could argue that was actually a pretty decent weekend for HeroesHearth. And he came out. It's funny because we get the stats reports, and then every week we go through those stats. Talking Trees during that week was like full beast mode.
Yeah.
I mean, just like, I think like a 17 KDA or something like that. It's just, he broke the stats for this phase, but it's something that he's played with this team before, came through, had that high impact on a similar role that we saw, and he played some Genji games for them back then. He plays a flex role. I know when I talked to him last year, he's like, I like to think of myself as I can play anything, and he's done that for his teams in Open Division and even previously in competitive.
And even, you know, when no matter what roster I feel like we've seen Talking Trees on, even in his time within HGC, I can't help but feel like he has been that kind of outlier player no matter what roster has been, and his time on HeroesHearth, as you said, it kind of broke stats, really. He sat and just he was such an outlier that it was like almost like you didn't want to see him cross-compared with the rest of North America. So it's going to be really interesting to see the level of performance here, and I feel like it's a good benchmark knowing that their opponent is LFM.
Yeah, just a sub for this weekend. We'll get more into that later. First, we're going to get into the standings so we can see how North America will look before this weekend gets underway. Obviously, HeroesHearth sitting at the top, still at that 9-1 mark. Tempo Storm still within striking range. When Team Freedom dropped their series against Endemic, kind of put them distant. But Dreadnought, the team you mentioned that everybody's got their eyes on, doubleheader this weekend, is Octalysis.
Octalysis has so much ahead of them here, and as we said, with Tempo Storm probably going to be the first opponents that they end up facing here, that is a major mark for them to be able to prove with this kind of new meta, anti-meta, whatever it may be, that draft advantage they've been looking for. How successful is it going to be? Because they looked clean against Endemic, and it wasn't with as much draft diversity as maybe we got earlier from them.
Well, we'll take a look at the schedule because, as he mentioned, Octalysis versus Tempo Storm will be our nightcap later. We did see EU earlier, and as I said, a quick day there is Fnatic took down Granite Gaming 3-0, as did Dignitas over Method. But first, Dreadnought, we've got HeroesHearth, the team that everybody came here to watch today at the start of the day. They're going to be taking on LFM, a team that's also going through some changes of their own. They've had Dark Chimera in for a couple of weeks. I talked to him earlier this week. It seems that his comfort level is starting to show more and more. And in that support role, we've seen probably more than in a long time, especially since some of the, we could say, nerfs in terms of the damage output, the playmaking abilities that we've seen on some of the newer supports. It's definitely taken its favor for a lot of these players.
Yeah, like Dark Chimera, as you said, he has been able to really show on specific supports, especially that of like Decker Kane we have gotten from him to really be able to stand out. And I can't help but feel like for LFM, with some of the roster adjustments that they had early on by picking up Fury and now here with Dark Chimera, they're in a position that their front and back line has a lot going for it, and I can't help but feel like enabling those damage dealers to really be able to thrive is going to be the tool that LFM relies on if they have any success here against HeroesHearth.
Well, speaking of damage dealers, we heard from Kroan on the side of HeroesHearth. We also heard from Dark Chimera on LFM on their thoughts about this series.
LFM is probably the nicest org I've ever been. Not just like the org, but all the team players. Everyone's super supportive and nice. Never been flamed once. I really enjoy playing with them. Right now, I'd say what we're looking at is focusing on improving our macro play through draft a lot, but also just making sure we're always looking at the advantages that we can take and exploiting every minor advantage that we're given. HeroesHearth, we're expecting it's going to be more difficult, so we kind of care a little less about that match. Not super expecting to win, but trying our best and putting on as good a show and learning as much as possible is the real goal for me, at least.
So I think that LFM does, some things very well, but they're a team that can't quite capitalize on the things that they do get. I think what it's going to take to beat LFM is just, recognizing what it is that they're trying to play, draft set that we're comfortable with, and, I think on even footing, then we will take the series. I think that we are a stronger team right now. So I think that as long as, we play a clean game throughout the whole thing, then it shouldn't be too much of an issue for us. But you just have to watch out for their moments where, they're making plays.
Well, we heard from Dark Chimera said, hey, we need to try and capitalize on some of those small things, whether it be through draft or just the macro play. I talked to Kron. He said, man, he's like, they're a pretty good team, but they've got to work on some macro things. So it's good to see LFM have that introspection to know the things that they have to work on. For context, the interviews were done before the hot button topic this week. That's why there's really not a lot in there. I think maybe preparation might be a little differently. Dark Chimera, obviously LFM has the double set this weekend, the other one versus Endemic. So HeroesHearth, a tall task, maybe gets their luck against Endemic. But for Dark Chimera and Team Dreadnought, they do have to make some minor adjustments. It seems like they're so close, yet so far sometimes.
Yeah, I think that as you said, with the kind of self-reflection and the introspection that we get from LFM, they probably have one of the best self-evaluations that I feel like I've seen as a roster. And from my perspective, that's a large reason we've seen that very slow and steady development and growth out of them as a group. They did focus originally, it seemed like, a lot on the macro, and that is always the safe place to go. We always know minions are going to spawn on every battleground, so getting an advantage and learning how to manipulate that is always a great place to start. But now it is them learning the fine details in between, like, hey, this guy might be out of position. Can we get the upper hand here and that and there? So when they can find that, and if they can get that, I truly think that they can be one of the best teams here in North America. But HeroesHearth Esports, as they have highlighted, probably not going to be giving up too much for free here.
They're a pretty good macro team in their own. And Dreadnought, a map that you love as one of the best macro maps in the game. Got some Dragonshire right out of the gate, and it's not HeroesHearth's pick. It's actually LFM's pick. So if they want to test their mettle and say, hey, how much can we control rotations, they're taking it to one of the tougher battlegrounds to make that happen.
Yeah, I feel like this is a very bold statement there for LFM, though this is a battleground that since they have made adjustments onto their priority that they're a bit more comfortable on, HeroesHearth Esports not going to feel too shabby. I can't help but wonder, is that element of, like, maybe if we adjust the rotation of pick order by picking this battleground, could be some of the thought process as well. But there's got to be a lot of focus, as I always talk about, towards the offlane. A lot of that pressure I'm going to be interested in, and even more so now on HeroesHearth Esports, because they have constantly relied on Arthlon on that kind of off-roll to get that side soak, and again, to mid the late game. What does that look like now here with the adjustments and trees?
It's going to be interesting to see. As we mentioned, Talking Trees did sub in week 1, and I must say put on a masterful performance in his own right in that regard. You mentioned the solo lane Dreadnought. Swabs has been a player that at times seems like a standout player, and it almost seems like you could make that comment for LFM at various points. Fury, sometimes he's carrying the game, sometimes Swabs, sometimes Droplets, sometimes now Dark Chimera is making the play. But we need LFM to not just have one person. We need the full team dynamic from this team to really take it to the next level, because they still have aspirations. Right now, they're sitting in the number 7 spot, but we need a full performance from this team to get out of that crucible spot and get into the playoffs.
And when we've talked to them in the past, it is very clear that their thought process is, if we show up and we can perform, as you said, not just a here and there, one player this weekend, another player the next, as a full unit, and can really bring their A game on any weekend, they can take any team here in North America. And judging by some of the wild results we've gotten, I believe that to be a true statement as well. We'll find out if they have what it takes here. But for now, Medivh and Abathur are the bans.
Well, the Abathur pick, obviously we know HeroesHearth does love to run that solo support Abathur at times. It doesn't matter the battleground. It seems like they have a strategy for any map. And LFM, they don't want to deal with any potential solo Abathur. The other thing to consider is, obviously, if it becomes more of an Abathur battleground that doesn't require solo support, which it seems like every battleground for HeroesHearth, Talking Trees does play a very good Abathur. So Maiev, Medivh banned out by HeroesHearth. Abathur taking away some of these more unique picks available. And Dreadnought, for this map, you did mention the priority on that solo lane. We know how high Yrel's strength is in that one, but Deckard has taken over some of this first pick potential for a lot of the team.
He has, very much so, especially when things like Dahaka are paid attention to within the first 4 bans of the game, which we actually didn't get in this situation, but it is a really good point you bring up. When and if do you prioritize that Yrel? I can't help but feel like I like her even more than things like the Dahaka, but a lot of that focus on getting that early game pressure with her and enabling her, because she doesn't do too much other than survive on her own within that lane. So if you see the Yrel, I'm saying look for focus towards that off lane or the 2-3 to get that pressure with the Yrel out here. But we're going to stick a little bit more towards the North American priority here and open up with the Deckard.
The Deckard's pretty OP in North America. As you can see on the ticker down below, you can put your vote in chat. But obviously, previously before that, this week for BlizzCon, don't forget, opening week is available for attending at the Blizzard Arena. So if you do want to attend that, that is available this year. Something that I recommend anybody that has the opportunity to check that out, as we do see the Yrel prioritized in the early part of the draft for LFM, but they're also getting the Sergeant Hammer pre-second ban.
And LFM has shown that they have pretty good understanding of laning situations on Dragonshire, as long as they have a very effective sieger, which now having the Sergeant Hammer and then having swabs over in the Yrel, I feel like this puts them in a grand position to either open up with that 2-1-2 that we saw them pull out, I believe it was against Temple Storm even, or something of the like 2 weeks ago here. And if they run it at 2-1-2, could be crippling, or just, again, have very fluid laning. LFM is very, very good at having fluid laning for how, again, struggling of a team they've been in North America.
For HeroesHearth Dreadnought, they recognize the priority of having the strong solo laner, making sure that they also have the global. They pick up the Dahaka. They also grab Diablo. And we know Ishbu has made some killer plays on this Diablo. And you look at the situation, right? Later game, once you get forts down, Dahaka all of a sudden has several Brush Stalker opportunities to get behind a Sergeant Hammer. So if you can force out that self-cleanse at one point, and then all of a sudden, like, Diablo, Dahaka, Deckard, all D's apparently all in there. They all have some form to initiate without having to overlap. And so it's going to be very crucial, I think, for the Sergeant Hammer and potentially the support pickup to maybe have a secondary cleanse option. And Whitemane is one of those.
Yeah, Whitemane is one of those selections. And without the new Tyrande rework, not going to be an option yet here for one of those options to be able to get that early game peel. Other ones that do come to mind, Karzim, but that's 16 is once you get to that point to get that level of peel and defensiveness there between the two.
Breaking news, by the way, this just came in on the ride in today. Dreadnought is a fan of the Tyrande rework. We'll see if we can fully turn him into a Tyrande.
I am a fan. She is a beast, man. Holy cow. As long as you don't get blinded, man, she is a different support character. I'll tell you that much.
It's funny because I always hear Dread. He's never been a big fan of Tyrande. I think at different points maybe had to deal with some Diablo Tyrande combos, Muradin Tyrande combos back in the day. But now Tyrande rework seems to be maybe coming into the meta. We are still on the Whitemane balance patch as we're going to get a Li Ming, and we're still getting the Thrall, making sure to have that. So no sustain, no auto attack damage, no Jimmy Raynor.
And no default wave clear, really, when looking at HeroesHearth composition. That is a pretty big hole within the 5-man selection that they have so far. Li Ming is their best wave clear other than Diablo or the Thrall. Even though Thrall will be a part of that kind of bottom half laning section here, I can't help but feel like that is something that LFM surely is looking to abuse here in this composition that they have, especially with the hammer that they have. They have the true ability to kind of get that 2-1-2 macro pressure that I don't know if HeroesHearth is totally comfortable with yet. But last pick there is going to be Dark Chimera on the Malfurion.
Nature's Cure only takes care of some CC, not all CC in the same way a Cleanse does. So again, it seems that when we look at the basic abilities of a Deckard, of a Diablo, of a Dahaka if he joins in, but a Thrall, there is so much follow-up CC in that, I mean, you get 2 out of the 4 and all of a sudden you're like, oh, wait a minute, somebody's not getting out of here alive. I think it's going to be very crucial for Dark Chimera to have his roots available, maybe use them more defensively than offensively unless they're looking for a pick. Try and zone some of that out. The Nature's Cure only there for some of that, but the self-cleanse, there is a lot on the side of LFM, I think, to deal with the level of aggression that we see in the early part here of the draft for HeroesHearth.
I think you paint it best with that last sentiment. Essentially, HeroesHearth Esports, they're HeroesHearth. They know what they're doing here, right? But if they fail to get early game aggression the way that they need to with the lack of wave clear that they have, and if, for instance, brush stocks happen, you know, heavy contributions of one heart part of the battleground, but LFM doesn't all-in kind of commit, their macro pressure that you should get in the downtime is significantly greater than HeroesHearth. HeroesHearth needs to disrupt and control the laning situation through kills, not through lane pressure.
It's going to be fun. I'm really looking forward to this. LFM, this is one of their more solid drafts, and you look at HeroesHearth, this is a very, it's almost like a counter towards Sergeant Hammer in some regards with the Li Ming pickup, but obviously Thrall, we know ever since Tempo Storm started that, it was keep Thrall mid lane, rotate top bottom wherever needed. We're going to find out how this actually unfolds as it's time to get game number 1 underway. We're going to see if HeroesHearth, with this aggressive comp, can take down the Sergeant Hammer on the side of LFM.
Starting off in the blue, ladies and gentlemen, it is LFM with Fury on the Murden. Gonna go ahead and have Yrel played by Swabs. Droplets is going to be on that Phoenix. Figgy playing the Sergeant Hammer. And last, support in the squad is Malfurion played by Dark Chimera.
On the other side is that of HeroesHearth, and we know that there is one member missing, and filling in is going to be Talking Trees. But first, BBJ, he's the support on the side of HeroesHearth. He's on Deckard. Ishbu on the front line, of course. He'll be initiating on Diablo. McIntyre on Dahaka. Talking Trees will be on that Thrall, so living up to the flex position. And then Crowan on the Li Ming.
It's always a sight to behold, Jay-How. Crowan on Li Ming. There's never a matchup, a series, a game, really, that you end up seeing that name above that hero and you don't go, it's going to be a good time for resets.
I'm really curious if we do get a Seeker here. We've seen some minor success, but you look at the options on the other side between a Phoenix, between a Sergeant Hammer, is that Phoenix, large hitbox. Sergeant Hammer, mostly immobile until level 7, and even then it's rather slow. There are targets, and bursting through that shield and then letting the rest of the team kind of follow up through that initiation of that front line could have some extreme value in the team fights.
It really could. That's a good point that you kind of bring up with some of the talent adjustments here. And something that I want to highlight when it comes to the laning situation is we do already see LFM trying to kind of mix up the laning circumstances with a 2-1-2, but it's more of a 1-2-2, which is very different than a 2-1-2 because the split pressure and the off lane is a lot closer to the kind of struggling lane, which is going to be on the bottom half of the battleground here. I would like to see LFM find a way to be able to split that up a little bit because that is exactly the cadence and tempo that HeroesHearth wants to be playing the early game of Dragonshire on.
Well, so look, you have a baseline Stormbolt quest. Once you hit 25 times, then you get the Pierce on it. They did go third win, did Fury on that Murd, and sometimes we see that level of aggression out of players when they're trying to stack up the level 1. Maybe not so much the baseline, but Fury, he likes to go in and poke and prod and just kind of, you know, disrupt the rotations. He's that ward. I mean, if you look at the minimap, Dreadnought, he has not really left that Bermuda triangle that you refer to.
Yeah.
He's just now coming down. They get the stun on the BBJ, the follow-up roots. This might be enough.
Damage coming through. Figgy trying to get the autos in, but it's not enough for a kill. Now Fury is going to get locked down by Ishbu with that shadow charge. Nobody going to go down there, but great setup there from LFM and response from HeroesHearth.
Deckard's a tough dude, man.
For how old he is, I mean, yeah, he was flexing there. That was impressive.
I mean, he went down in D3, but he's back here in the Nexus and stronger than ever. He survived almost 15, 20 years of Diablo. I mean, if you can live in Sanctuary, you can live anywhere.
That's a really good point. I've never even thought about that. Lore-wise, he might be the toughest guy here.
He might just be.
He laughs in the face of terror. Look at that.
Right now, Fury's looking terror right in the face here as Ishbu and Fury squaring off on the Shrine, end up going to win out there by LFM. They also have the Siege Giants to come in behind them, and right now in control of both Shrines.
And this is because now you see the adjustment in the laning situation. LFM is now keeping Phoenix with the wave clear advantage into their favor there, and then instead now keeping the Siege of the Giants on the bottom half. It's a 1-1-3 instead of that 1-2-2 that they opened up with. Dark Chimera getting rooted. Brushtalk going to come through. Drag ends up landing, and that is first blood here for HeroesHearth Esports. Can they get another?
Yeah, Fury did a very good job making sure that Ishbu couldn't get on top of Sergeant Hammer. Sergeant Hammer very deep, ended up using that Unstoppable on the way out. Dreadnought, the adaptation that we're seeing in the build from Crowan is going to be that triumvirate, making sure once you hit past 50% on that Arcane Orb, you get the cooldown reduction on that, can make very good poke position. Does have to hit a hero with that splash damage, so it's enough. We'll see if we get a further adaptation at level 7.
was going to be a pretty easy setup there for a moment, but Figgy able to dodge it out there on the bottom half. HeroesHearth with that skirmish gained laning control for a moment in their favor, J-How. But as we have said, that's what they need to do with this composition. Exactly that kill potential multiple times and then further their advantage through that.
Ching.
Yeah, it hit.
Every time it hits. It's one of the sweetest sounds in the game, outside of getting in the rhythm stacks when you're a Taika.
Yeah, ding, 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 ding. And you're like, oh my goodness, my dopamine in my brain right now is just firing.
Well, right now the siege continues here in the bot lane without much of a response here. You can see between Murden and the Phoenix, if you watch them on the minimap, Fury is completely being a ward, making sure that no rotations happen. They're keeping all eyes on it as Ishbu walks away from that, as that mobile offense coming out from Droplets really harassing them. Fury trying to keep up the channel. There's going to be another interrupt. Ishbu should have, I'm going to say, if needed, has that fire stomp or the shadow charge, but Dahaka able to control that top lane.
Yeah, good job there by HeroesHearth Esports. But J-Hal, we have to raise the concern outside of that one rotation, that gank, that the laning control is very much in favor of LFM as we get the stun, the root follow-up damage coming out on the BBJ. Wow. But this time, it is enough there. Kill here for LFM, but the response is Ishbu flips over. Figgy throws down the thruster, but look at that. Pharaoh's Spirit hit by talking trees there. Hang the wrist as he hits the fadeaway. And another kill for HeroesHearth.
You kind of wondered, did they maybe flip him too early, because Crowan had a combo coming through there. But as we mentioned at the start of this, the amount of follow-up CC behind this and the amount of control that it warrants on the side of HeroesHearth, able to get that trade-off there, as we see Swabs getting some pressure in the top lane when Dahaka ended up brush stalking bottom. So pretty even in terms of experience. Nobody really establishing dominance just yet.
One thing we haven't talked about too much when it comes to that level 1 that we were dabbling in a little bit earlier when talking about the third win opportunity. Hold on, skirmish down below. Fury going to go ahead and juke. HPU actually getting slowed by drops with that plasma cutter. There's the Stormbolt follow-up route coming from Dark Chimera. HPU falling low, eating the potions as best as he can, is going to heal up. Race to 10s in heroics here, being won by LFM by a small fraction. We restore balance here on Dragon Child.
Right now, it seems LFM does have the high ground, Dreadnought.
They do seem to. And I've heard that that's pretty good.
Yeah.
What I was going to bring up a little bit, before we were trying to decipher who in fact does have that high ground, is that Murden's third wind is really valuable on Dragonshire. Those small skirmishes you get yourself into, but then being able to back out, rely on your passive healing you up that much higher, puts it into where you pretty much can always initiate, fall to 5%, walk out, and then reinitiate. Talking about initiations though, a bit of one here down below, the 2 vs 2 heavily won by LFM.
Sergeant Hammer just sieging up here, especially with Napalm Strike, as we see Swabs might be in some trouble. Does have Ardent Defender if he needs it. Is going to go ahead and pop that. Talking Trees uses the Earthquake to try and stay alive. It keeps him alive, but not for long.
APOC.
Here comes the APOC combo into that. Doesn't get the flip, but they get the stop onto the Yrel. That's going to be the stun there. Droplets warps out, as we see Essence used by McIntyre. Also has the Burrow under. He's going to be just fine.
Just fine there. McIntyre and friends hold on with a 1-to-1 trade there between the two.
Oh!
On the bottom half, though, Disintegrate sets it up here. Now HeroesHearth pulling ahead. McIntyre even coming in with that brush stock, unable to land the drag, but surely there's going to be a bit of Dragonite pressure here for HeroesHearth Esports. So I say that, it's denied here.
Maybe a pixel off on that. I mean, that was close.
Yeah,
that was close. Ishbu's going to find Fury there. No 13-16 combo locked in. Of course, we know W build is there. Ishbu does get the reset on that over his W, making sure to heal up off that. So all things back to normal. The setup there, BBJ trying to go for the combo onto Droplets. He's going to get out to safety, though.
HeroesHearth here backing out, looking to pick up their mercenary camps. I'm interested to see if they go for the double stack between the Knights or if they're just going to send Dahaka up towards top by himself. It looks like they're going to wait onto the Knight, not look for that split pressure. Smart decision there from HeroesHearth, considering that we are still a ways out from that Dragon Knight, and having that offlane pressure with the global advantage into their favor is going to be really important over the next Shrine phase. Drag does end up landing onto Swabs. Shadow Charge got knocked back there. Great job by Swabs. That interrupt saved him from that stun. Not sure it would have netted a kill either way, but good mechanics being displayed here by LFM.
Crowan just blinks out of the root, trying to get the safety. That blink is down for now. Fury comes in. There's going to be the stun. The Plasma Cutter is going to lock in. Salvo comes out. It's a trade 1-for-1 as we see Hammer goes down. Now we're getting resets for Crowan. There's going to be a second kill. Seeing if he can get more. No Calamity. Can't just jump in there, but Droplet's low. There's going to be another one. That's 3 down for now. See if he gets another blink and teleport in. Got him with that Seeker.
That Seeker bonus damage is the reason that was enough damage to be able to take down Fury there, as you heard just the thud as each one of those magic missiles collapse onto that little dwarf. That was pretty there, J-How.
That doesn't happen without that level 7 talent. Of course, you could make the argument that he could have got the Calamity reset on Phoenix before that, maybe escalated things quicker, but nonetheless, the results are the same.
Definitely shows a bit more skill there coming out from Crowan. It's a
also
lot harder than
glass
Calamity.
cannon.
I mean, this guy, he does not afraid here. And with the Dragonite now accumulated there, that is going to be Crowan inside of that. No Talontier advantage in reach for HeroesHearth for quite some time. See where they end up deciding to commit this Dragonite. Bottom would make the safest amount of sense, purely based on the highest value rotation, considering the Mercenaries afterwards. But already taking about 50% there onto the Dragonite is going to limit how much HeroesHearth can achieve here in the bottom lane.
Ishbu is going into the devastating charge. There's going to be the knockback. Biggie does have the self-cleanse, able to get out of there. Again, the rotation on his abilities and what he actually needs to use for safety was a talking point we had at the start of this game. I'd say that was a pretty good example of making sure, it's like, look, I'm okay if I'm rooted here, but if I get the big plays after that, making sure to have that self-cleanse available, very good discipline there by Biggie.
Really good, as you said there, by Figgy. The control being displayed there. Hold on, though.
Oh, wow.
A lot of crowd control here throughout mid. McIntyre on Dahaka is absolutely disgusting this game, J-How. He has landed so many of the drags, and he's been so many times he's going for a drag onto one target where he's got isolation onto the off target. Like, he is prepping HeroesHearth with these rotations here. And that was some of the concern I had when talking about the draft, is when they commit to those, if they end up failing in those, it's going to look difficult because of LFM's composition. But McIntyre's no slouch there on the Dahaka.
Fury lurking for now. We did see the camp down here in the bottom picked up by HeroesHearth. See if they'll push in, try and get this. They have the threat of 16, and this fort's pretty low.
I think it's likely they'll be able to force this out here. But one thing I wanted to talk about that we saw, hold on, no time wasted there with the brush stock. Great job by Figgy, though, able to get the breathing room this time, is about Li Ming. Li Ming on Dragonshire. We normally go, not a bad battleground, but not necessarily one of our best, purely based on wave clear, sieging capabilities, and things of the like. The Eastern Clash, we got the adaptation of Infinite Archon selection at 20.
Oh, man.
I actually, the more I've been playing it a little bit more, theory crafting a little bit more, I've talked about how few heroes can force a sieging situation. I'm suddenly wondering, number one, are we going to get that in this game? And number two is, are we, as time goes on, going to see that more prominent on battlegrounds like Dragonshire? Because situations like this with the 20, you just go, this is our key. You demand the answers.
It's been fun. There's going to be the reset onto that, and that's going to lock in Phoenix. He's almost going to go down, just manages to warp out. Talking Trees, he's on the front line. They have no minions. He's actually taking keep shots on the way out. There's going to be the stun still. That is all from the help of the keep, but they have Murd in lockdown for now.
Fury needs to be able to door toss, but it gets interrupted there last second with that shadow charge out from Ishbu. McIntyre looking for another drag, maybe onto Swabs, as the keep still getting poked down. There lands the drag, but Swab's able to make it out. Keep goes down here in favor of HeroesHearth Esports as we have our next Shrine phase.
HeroesHearth starting to pick it up. There was a camp at the top, so that's going to likely take that down before a response can get there. So Fort will go down. But in terms of absolute control, HeroesHearth now up 10 kills to 4 with that bottom keep down. Does have the global option. Ishbu going to be interrupted. This is only 12+ minutes in, Dread. It's not normally like we see... Oh man, Droplet's barely out of this. Not normally like we see 12-minute DKs just walk up to a core here. Nature's Cure was just used. That's actually very crucial for the next few moments.
Yeah, it is a very big cooldown that they may want for their side here in a second. Ishbu's going to go ahead and move on. Man, Crowan setting up all that damage there onto Figgy, unable to make it out there, and that is the first kill. BBJ now the focus. Stormbolt lands. Ardent Defender popped 1-for-1 here. Shadow Charge does end up going through. Fury is the focus for now. There is the crowd control hit by Talking Trees, and it's enough to get another kill as HeroesHearth pulls ahead and now looks to the DK.
They don't have Deckard, but they basically have enough heroes that can keep themselves alive between Thrall, Diablo, and Dahaka. They can make an aggressive push here without that, plus they have the numbers advantage. Li Ming dealing with that camp in the top lane. Just get some marginal pressure. For them, I think right now, mid-fort, take down the keep, although if they get a Phoenix kill, Nature's Cure was used there again. They managed to get 2 keep towers down on this front wall. That push towards 20 is going to make this very difficult for LFM.
Not only the push towards 20, but a lot of the vision control available throughout mid. Taking top 4, it's only going to kind of amplify that problem as well. This is normally I would be like, I want to see that middle fort pressure being applied a little bit heavier, and with the 20 spike, see that rotation up. But purely because of the global advantage that you have in favor of HeroesHearth Esports here, I like to see them here make the transition up. Because mid, riskier when it comes to Dragon Knight value, and normally you'd be like, well, the fort isn't going to be worth it. That value that McIntyre is going to have on the Dahaka, especially with the 20 spike, I think is going to be able to make up for that difference this year. LFM trying to respond, mirroring on the opposite side of the battleground here, trying to take bottom fort, but the race heavily being won in experience, as we have said, by HeroesHearth.
Well, you mentioned heroes that can force a siege. Sergeant Hammer is one of those ones that does warrant a response. The problem is HeroesHearth's draft. My goodness. The draft, again, the flanking capabilities of a Dahaka coming in on the backside of that, that's always scary. And then you cleanse out one of those, and then you have the follow-up. And I think LFM recognized that because McIntyre's on the bottom left of the screen looking to see if he can initiate Dread.
Yeah, and also, it's going to be Tal Rasha's. We do not actually get the Infinite Archon, so no sieging opportunities here. That might be something that HeroesHearth wish they have in their favor. It's more so LFM and the burden on them to abuse that element of non-existence. McIntyre actually out a bit too far, forced to get the Burrow Sock and use the isolation. That's enough damage there. LFM get the kill.
That's enough. We're going to see if they can track it down. There's going to be the Hellgate used by Ishbu to make sure and get out the safety, because with Swabs on that level 7 does have that cooldown reduction on that jump in, so could very easily have tracked him down. So very important that we see Ishbu get out of there alive. Does buy some time. It is the one hero outside of maybe a Leoric, but when you have a global, it's somewhat more forgiving in the sense that I can get back on the battleground quicker just with that global. But you never want to see that, especially when you already have that much of a lead, Dread, because that's just comeback experience and time for the enemy team to force experience on other parts of the map.
Yeah, usually the only time that you look at that kind of decision-making and you go, oh, it's not that bad, is with the Apex Predator pickup at level 20, right? But because we have the Contagion, then you go, that's a pretty big cooldown. We shouldn't be looking to kind of use that purely to re-initiate here. LFM with this downtime, still 13 seconds for them to kind of dictate the play over the next few minutes here on Dragonchar. Are going to get their Knights. They will have that advantage towards top. As we've said there, with the global advantage on the favor of HeroesHearth Esports, I can't help but feel like it's going to be a pretty easy clear for Dahaka in that top lane. Also, really clever play by HeroesHearth to stall out on the bottom half. This is only going to be able to delay the timing and pressure that they have on this bottom lane and make sure that it comes up only as the Dragon Knight, which they need with their global advantage and the mercenary timing here.
This is probably the one situation where it's a small example, but a very important example for the reason why we, as commentators, highlight the bottom lane. And now that vision control is firmly there, it will warrant a response. You have the global on your side, despite 20 on the other side. If HeroesHearth plays their rotations right, Phoenix already showed, so they can path through this area aggressively because they know they'd have a numbers advantage. But the rotations, now they control those firmly in their favor.
And now you have one of two options for LFM in these type of situations. It's not that the rotations are impossible, they're just very predictable. We know you have to move through mid-Bermuda Triangle, through this minion wave, give up vision, and that's when McIntyre comes in, has something to say. The Treant, though, gonna eat the drag this time. BBJ will be here to join in, as the rest of the members of HeroesHearth are actually getting threatened throughout mid. Ishpu and friends, Crowan falling very low, hammered back from Swabs. Pressure on the core, but it's only 2 Giants and 1 Catapult, so not enough to threaten there for LFM. And now, it's all about the mid lane, J-How.
HeroesHearth didn't necessarily play that patient approach. Instead, it was, look, we think that everybody's rotating bottom, so they sent Dahaka there to basically try and survive long enough so they could get the DK and then maybe get out of there. But instead, LFM split their focus a little, and now they ended up almost turning that fight against them. And with level 20, they're on even footing in this regard, but that bottom lane is still mounting down there with the catapults.
Yeah, double catapult pressure. Phoenix looking to backdoor in between the minion waves, so they don't know he's there until now for HeroesHearth Esports, as they see bottom lane getting converted back. Dahaka has displayed himself in the top lane, ridding of those mercenaries. No use of the Frost Shock quite yet. So a time where LFM has been able to get the pause button into their favor, but until bottom lane is restored back into their favor momentum-wise, it is still control in favor of HeroesHearth Esports here. It is important that LFM get that bottom lane back across that line of scrimmage drawn halfway through Dragonshire if they want to get another Dragon Knight.
I like what LFM is doing. Urel didn't stay on that point. They saw the Brush Stalker. HeroesHearth rotated up. Now LFM, they're going to grab a Siege Camp. That will help alleviate some of the pressure in the bot lane. The problem is HeroesHearth has Siege Camp of their own that they could pull out. So we'll see the rotation as Urel just shows Biggie. Which means that Biggie getting caught out here, that's not what you want to see. Just like that, HeroesHearth, they might be looking to try in the beginning of the end.
Should it be their time to be able to pick up this Dragon Knight? If anybody makes their way towards top, it should just be a brush stock double two-man kind of contesting over that objective. Hold on, though. Caught out is going to be Ishbu. Stormbolt goes down. Along with the roots, they get him, but he's going to be back here in 4 seconds as he does have souls. BBJ ends up throwing down the scroll of ceiling, but no setup quite yet. Mac eats the Stormbolt. Talking Trees now joining the rest of the fight. Swab leaps forward. No hammer use yet as he gets the cleanse there. Droplets falling low. McIntyre even lower. Scroll of ceiling comes out, and here's the flank there as they go in. Try to get the damage out. The 20 proc is there, but Phoenix is dead.
Ishbu going in, he's trying to make the follow-up plays. He comes back on that Diablo, as you mentioned, had the souls, had the capability, and Crowan comes in. He's like, look, just for good measure, we don't want you coming back from the dead here. Lands that full combo, gets the takedown onto Malfurion, and now this is all she wrote. HeroesHearth, they just have to walk down this bottom lane patiently. It's going to be game number 1 going over to HeroesHearth.
Biggest tools that comms in this type of situation within game, more often than not, is like, what is the only way we can really make this mistake? Li Ming don't die is probably about the only thing there. And other than that, it is going to be a pretty dominant control here. But I will say, pleasantly surprised with some of the laning choices and competitiveness, especially in the mid game there from LFM. Just can't help but feel like some of the early game laning situations kind of hurt considering the pacing they needed with this type of composition. But showing they understand the macro game here as HeroesHearth Esports is going to take game number 1. Pretty dominant fashion here, 20 minutes in.
Yeah, there was that weird position. Obviously, McIntyre getting caught in that bot lane kind of created some chaos towards the latter part of that game. But as you said, HeroesHearth did have some more crisp early game rotations in their favor as Sergeant Hammer, obviously a lot of damage for the side of LFM, but Crowan, 10 kills, 0 deaths, and behind an old school build.
Yeah.
Between Triumvirate at 4, but Secret level 7.
It's all but it checks out here, J-How. That's how I feel about that Li Ming build.
That used to be all he played. Like when he was on the come up, it wasn't until we saw Korea really start to go into Calamity back in the day. But that was also when Calamity affected minions.
And it made a lot of value in terms of wave clear.
Yeah.
It definitely made sense as the superior talent at that point in time. Calamity's been nerfed enough when it comes to HP and dominance, which is the synergy with Calamity, that has made it that duo that was like, nah, this is the way to play Li Ming. It definitely has seen enough nerfs that it makes sense we see this as a response. But as you said, that was the original Crowan build, was you had Glass Cannon, Seeker Li Ming, and you heard that beautiful little audio cue as people like, Fury kind of suffered at the hands of last game.
You don't expect that much damage. I mean, you see the health bar of Emerald and you're like, all right, that's still a lot of health. And then you realize, like, wait a minute, that's not as much health as I thought.
On that same note, it's something you and I were talking about a little bit, and a talent that I personally am suddenly becoming massively kind of obsessed with is the Crossfire, which functions almost in the same element, right? Not as skill-oriented as the Li Ming, but that bonus damage amplification that you get on Blaze at level 7, if both of those flamethrowers end up landing, that kind of play there. I would like to see more people maybe mix those two together, because late game, I mean, you almost one-shot somebody.
Yeah, we saw so much of that in Korea, and then everything else. I mean, obviously there's a place for Gorilla and Kill. It seemed like the place, but getting that burst damage. Obviously, you have the Incinerator Gauntlets. I think that's somewhat good on some PvE maps, but as you said, getting that burst damage on that single target, definitely something that we have seen as of late, especially post-Eastern Clash. For HeroesHearth, Dreadnought, obviously a very clean game in most aspects, but for LFM, they tried to make that a tough fight. I think that they did that. It seemed like when LFM was at their weakest, there was the gank that they had in the bot lane around mid-game. Fury jumped in, got very aggressive. They lost the flank potential, the protection on that backside, and that's when Dahaka and team, again, the amount of CC, I think that's where the Dahaka pick was so crucial, and I think that's why HeroesHearth, they were like, look, this is our way to try and counter that type of play, especially Malfurion no longer has the ice block, but counter that backline of the Sergeant Hammer, you just get in flank. And once that map starts to open up, the flank positions open up with it. I mean, there's just more and more, so I think that Dahaka pickup was brilliant. You pointed it out mid-game. I thought it was an excellent call. McIntyre killed it that game outside of that one where he got over-aggressive there. You take that away, pretty clean game from McIntyre.
And even that one moment where he was kind of, caught out, I think what you actually kind of saw come to light in that one moment was it seemed like HeroesHearth was trying to disengage, right? And I think that was them going like, wait a minute, can we force? They're far enough away from their keep that with 20 spikes, can we initiate? Not expecting everybody to just be patiently waiting in that shrub like, oh, come here, McIntyre. So it made it look like a little bit of miscommunication on HeroesHearth Esports, but, with talking trees and things of the like here this weekend, I think that small bumps and bruises like that are expected.
Maybe let your foot off the gas a little bit in those moments. It's like, all right, maybe this is what we normally do, but this is not what we're going to do this time. Look, either way, still a pretty good game, but for LFM, things look good as well. We're going to see if they can maybe pick up a win